I still remember the sound of the rain tapping against my window that morning. It had been months since my husband, Julian, left me for another woman, Allison. Every drop outside seemed to echo the silence that had filled my home ever since. I thought the worst part was over, until I opened the letter. It came in a crisp white envelope with Julian's handwriting. On it, bold, familiar, and cruelly neat. My heart sank as I unfolded the paper. "Juliet," it began, "I think it's time we discuss the bakery. My bakery. The one I had built from nothing. The one that had kept our family fed when Julian was jobless." The words that followed felt like a slap. He wanted half of it, half. After all the humiliation, the betrayal, the nights I cried while he was with Allison. He still wanted more. My hands trembled as I read the rest. His lawyer had already filed papers, demanding a division of assets. I couldn't believe it. Julian didn't want reconciliation. He wanted revenge. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind spun with memories. Our early days in San Diego, when we dreamed of opening that bakery together. Back then he promised, this will be our life's work. And now, he was tearing that dream apart for the woman who had destroyed our marriage. Called my son Daniel, who lived in another city now. When I told him about the letter, there was a long silence on the line. Finally he said, "Mom, don't give up what's yours. He's already taken enough from you." His voice was calm but firm, the kind that made me remember the little boy who used to help me knead dough in the mornings. Daniel's words gave me strength. Maybe I couldn't stop Julian from hurting me again, but I could fight. For my bakery, for my dignity, for the part of me that he couldn't steal. That night, I placed the letter in a box under my bed, next to old photos of our family and the first recipe book I ever wrote, and as I turned off the lights, one thought burned brighter than the darkness around me. If Julian wanted a fight, he was about to get one. But the next morning, when I walked into the bakery, something unexpected was waiting for me, something that told me Julian's plan had already begun. When I unlocked the bakery the next morning, the air felt different. The smell of sugar and vanilla usually greeted me with comfort, but that day, something was off. A strange chill ran through the shop, and as I looked around, I noticed the display case had been left slightly open, even though I was sure I'd locked it the night before. Then I saw it. A crumpled piece of paper on the counter. At first I thought it was a customer's note, but when I unfolded it, my blood ran cold. It was a copy of the same legal document Julian had sent, only this one had a sticky note attached that read, "You can't win, Juliet. It's already mine." The handwriting wasn't Julian's, it was Allison's. My heart pounded. How did she get in here? The bakery had always been my safe place, my escape from everything that had gone wrong, and now even that space was tainted by her presence. I quickly checked the security camera, but the footage from the night before was gone, completely erased. I sat down on the stool behind the counter, shaking. Julian must have given her the key, or worse, he'd come himself. Either way, they wanted to scare me, to make me feel powerless, but instead of fear, something else started to rise in me. Anger. The kind that comes from years of staying quiet. I picked up the note and tore it into tiny pieces. "Not this time," I whispered. Later that afternoon, my best friend, Mrs. Peterson, stopped by. She was the kind of woman who always knew when something was wrong. "You look pale, dear. Everything all right?" she asked, peering at me over her glasses. I told her everything. The letter, the lawsuit, the note from Allison. She placed her hand over mine and said, "Don't let them win, Juliet. Sometimes people like that feed off your fear. You have to show them you're not afraid." Her words stayed with me long after she left. That night I replaced the bakery's locks, backed up the camera footage to an external drive, and decided that if Julian and Allison wanted war, I'd fight it on my terms. And as I wiped the counters and turned off the lights, I looked at the reflection of my tired face in the window. Not a victim, but a woman ready to stand her ground. But I had no idea that Allison's next move wouldn't just target my bakery. It would strike at something much deeper, something I couldn't replace. A few days later, just when I thought things might calm down, Julian showed up at the bakery. He walked in like he still owned the place, confident, polished, wearing the same expensive cologne I once loved. For a moment, my heart stung with old memories, but I quickly straightened my posture and crossed my arms. "Julian, I said coldly. If you're here to threaten me, you can leave. He smiled, that smug smile that used to charm me but now only made my stomach turn. Threaten you? Come on, Juliet, he said smoothly. I just came to talk. Settle things peacefully. I stayed silent, letting him talk. He went on about how the bakery was technically part of our shared assets and how he just wanted what's fair. Every word out of his mouth dripped with manipulation. He didn't care about fairness, he cared about control. Then came the twist, Allison. Thinks maybe we can make this easy, he said. If you agree to sell the bakery and split the money, we'll both walk away happy. No court, no drama? I almost laughed. You mean you'll walk away happy? I replied. You've already got Allison. Isn't that enough? Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, maybe guilt, but he hid it quickly. You've changed, Juliet, he said quietly. No, I told him. You just never really knew me. He left without another word, but his silence scared me more than anything he could have said. I knew that kind of silence. It meant he was planning something. That evening, while closing up, I noticed a woman standing across the street. Dark hair, sunglasses, pretending to check her phone, but she wasn't fooling anyone. It was Allison. She didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. My chest tightened. That wasn't coincidence. That was a message. I locked up the bakery quickly, my hands trembling. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just a legal fight, it was psychological warfare. They wanted to break me mentally before they ever stepped into a courtroom. When I got home that night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my reflection in a cup of untouched tea, and I made myself a silent promise. They could try to scare me. But I wasn't giving up. Not now, not ever. But the very next morning, something happened that made me question everything and forced me to wonder if someone I trusted was helping Julian behind my back. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The bakery still dark and quiet. Something inside me stirred. Not fear. Not panic, but a cold determination. I couldn't let Julian and Allison manipulate me. Not when everything I had built was at stake. I brewed a cup of coffee and stared out the window. Across the street, nothing. Just the empty road, faint streetlights, and the early hum of a city that didn't know what was brewing in my life. But I knew they were planning something, and I had to be ready. I returned to the house, moving silently, making sure nothing looked out of place. Every drawer, every corner had to be exactly as Julian expected. I couldn't let him suspect that I had already started my own little countermeasures. That evening, I pretended to be tired. I cooked dinner for Julian, smiled politely, and listened to his stories of a stressful day at work, nodding like a compliant wife. But my mind was elsewhere. I had already hidden a small recorder in the bedroom, the one Daniel had bought for college. I checked the battery, made sure it was recording, and carefully positioned it so that every word in the room would be captured as I pretended to fall asleep. I could hear Julian moving around, his footsteps quiet but deliberate, then faintly Allison's voice, soft and playful, calling him from the phone. Yes, we'll see you soon, Julian whispered. Don't worry, everything is set. A shiver ran down my spine. They weren't just cheating anymore. They were coordinating behind my back, planning the next step, and I had proof. I spent the night lying there, eyes open, listening to every movement, every whisper, memorizing details, and making a mental map of their deceit. By morning I had what I needed, enough to take action without leaving myself vulnerable. The next day, while Julian was at work, I checked the recorder. Their voices, their laughter, their plotting, everything was clear. I copied the files onto a flash drive and hid it in the safest place in the house, under old family photos, in the drawer that no one ever touched. Even with the evidence secured, my heart was heavy. I thought about Daniel, about how he still believed in both of them. I couldn't let him see the truth yet, not until I was ready to reveal it in a way that would protect him, and just as I felt a fleeting sense of calm, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I know what you're doing. Be careful. Not everyone is on your side. My blood ran cold. Could Julian have an ally? Or worse, was someone else watching me too? The message lingered in my mind long after I put the phone down. Who could know? Julian and Allison had been careful, meticulous even, yet someone had noticed my little plan. My fingers trembled slightly, but I steadied myself. I couldn't afford panic. Not now. I went about the bakery as usual, kneading dough, arranging trays, and serving customers with the practiced smile of a woman who had seen too much. Inside, though, I was alert, calculating. Every sound, every shadow outside the window became a potential threat. I even noticed Mr. Miller across the street peering out of his doorway more than usual. Could he have seen something? No. Probably just curiosity. After closing the bakery, I went home under the dim evening streetlights. The house was quiet, eerily so. Julian's car was in the driveway, meaning he hadn't left for work yet. I felt my pulse quicken. Tonight I needed to act. Tonight I would plant. The next piece in my web, I retrieved the flash drive from its hiding place and connected it to my laptop. Audio files, photos, and video clips filled the screen, undeniable proof of Julian and Allison's betrayal. My plan had been to gather everything first, then confront them. But now I realized I had another option. I could expose them in a way they wouldn't anticipate, and I could do it without risking Daniel's piece. As I listened to the audio again, I noticed something strange, a faint background noise, almost like a second voice, a whisper I hadn't caught before. I replayed it several times. It wasn't Julian, it wasn't Allison. Someone else had been present during one of their secret meetings. My stomach tightened. This was bigger than I thought. Their betrayal was layered, and perhaps someone else was aiding them. Or watching them. I hid the laptop, making sure nothing was out of place. I couldn't let Julian suspect I knew about the second presence. Every detail mattered. My mind raced, thinking about what kind of person could be involved. An ally of theirs? A neighbor? Or, worse, someone I trusted? Then, just as I was about to close the blinds, I heard a soft knock at the door. My heart leapt. I wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, I approached and looked through the peephole. No one was there. Only a small envelope on the porch, neatly placed, as if waiting for me. I picked it up, hands steady despite the pounding of my heart. Inside was a single piece of paper with a note, written in unfamiliar handwriting. You think you're careful. They're not alone. Watch your back. Someone who cares. My blood ran cold. Someone else knew, but who? And were they truly on my side, or voting against me too? The envelope felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried more than just a warning. I sat at the kitchen table, the lamplight casting long shadows across the room, and studied the note again. They're not alone. The words repeated in my mind like a haunting refrain. I had meticulously planned every step of my retaliation, yet now it seemed someone else had entered the game, someone who knew the truth and was watching. 2, I ran through the possibilities. Who could it be? Mrs. Peterson? She had always been vigilant, but I trusted her. My son Daniel, maybe? No. He had no reason to involve himself this early, and I wouldn't risk alerting him until the plan had fully matured. My thoughts kept returning to Julian and Allison. The betrayal was bigger than I'd imagined, more dangerous. This wasn't just infidelity anymore. It was a calculated attempt to ruin me, and perhaps with accomplices. I decided to test the waters. I retrieved the laptop and checked the audio files once again. The faint whisper in the background caught my attention anew. I enhanced the sound and tried to isolate it. A man's voice, low, curt, almost commanding, interjected at several points during Allison's conversations. He was giving instructions, guiding her. My stomach twisted. Julian wasn't acting alone. Panic tried to creep in, but I pushed it aside. Fear wouldn't help me. Strategy would. I had to keep calm even more than before. I carefully made notes, highlighting every detail of the recordings, every nuance in Julian and Allison's speech. And now, this mysterious man's instructions. Each piece was a puzzle, and I had to see the full picture before I acted. Later that evening, I went to bed early, telling Julian I was exhausted from the bakery. He muttered something about my long day, completely oblivious. My ears were sharper than ever, listening for any hint of movement. Around midnight, Julian left the bedroom again, his phone glowing like a tiny beacon. I followed silently, hiding behind the living room curtain, just as I had before. This time, Julian wasn't alone on the line. The voice of the mysterious man, low and cold, spoke clearly. Make sure she leaves town. We cannot risk her interfering. I'll handle the rest. Julian responded with a tired chuckle. Don't worry. She's too careful to notice, and she trusts me too much. My blood boiled. He really did underestimate me. I retreated quietly, my mind racing. I needed a new strategy, one that accounted for this unknown player. I couldn't let anyone else control the board. I had already lost 40 years to deceit. But I refused to lose now. Rehook. End of part 6. Someone else was pulling strings, and Julian was only a puppet. The question was, who was the real mastermind? And how far would they going to stop me? The next morning, I woke before the sun, as I always did. The bakery awaited, and with it, the familiar rhythm of dough, ovens, and the faint sweetness of pastries. But my mind was elsewhere, consumed by the thought of the mysterious voice. Who was orchestrating Julian and Allison's scheme? And how had they learned of my every move? I had to find out before I acted. I decided to revisit the recordings, listening to every conversation from the beginning, isolating the background noises, footsteps, even the subtle shifts in tone. Then I heard it, a faint click, almost like the sound of a security door or a gate opening. It was in every recording before Allison left for the hotels, before any of the meetings. Whoever this was had access to our home, and worse, knew the exact moments Julian and Allison would act. Realized then that this was bigger than just revenge. This wasn't simply about exposing betrayal. This was about survival, about protecting the bakery, Daniel, and myself from a force I hadn't anticipated. I couldn't leave anything to chance anymore. Every move had to be precise, calculated, and perfect. At the bakery, I moved mechanically, kneading dough and arranging trays while my mind raced through contingencies. Every time the doorbell rang, every customer smile, every clink of silverware seemed like a test. Could anyone see through my calm? Could they sense the storm brewing inside me? Probably not, and that gave me an advantage. That evening, I returned home and decided to confront the evidence in person. I went to the hidden recorder in Daniel's room, replaying the conversations, with Julian and Allison while mapping out every instruction from the mysterious man. And then it hit me. The voice. It was Mr. Thomas, the detective, the one I had trusted. I replayed the moments carefully. The tone, the pauses, the subtle hints of guidance, all of it matched his behavior when he briefed me about evidence. A cold realization settled over me. Mr. Thomas wasn't just collecting evidence for me. He was manipulating the situation for his own purposes. He had planted suggestions in Julian's ear, nudging him toward certain actions, ensuring the drama unfolded in a way that served him. I felt my stomach tighten, a mixture of betrayal and rage. This was the ultimate twist. Not only had I been deceived by my family, but now I realized even my ally had a hidden agenda. Knew I couldn't confront him yet. The game wasn't over. I had to play carefully, letting him reveal himself further while I stayed one step ahead. Every decision from now on had to be precise, measured. One misstep could cost everything I had fought to protect. Rehook. End of part 7. The detective I trusted was playing his own game, but I was ready to turn the tables and expose him before he could strike. I spent the next day at the bakery with deliberate focus. Every customer interaction, every tray arranged, and every loaf cut and boxed became part of a larger plan. To the world, I was simply Juliet, the hardworking bakery owner, smiling and serving her community. But in my mind, I was strategizing each step to counteract Julian, Allison, and now Mr. Thomas. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that I needed to regain control over my environment. My home had been a stage for betrayal. My bakery was now my fortress. I started by checking every camera, every lock, every hidden corner. If Mr. Thomas truly had been guiding Julian and Allison, I couldn't afford to leave any blind spots. I even installed a few subtle, inconspicuous cameras in the rooms he might enter, carefully hiding them behind picture frames and small objects. Later that evening, I prepared dinner for myself and Daniel, keeping the conversation light but planting seeds of trust. "Mom, you've been very quiet lately," he remarked, noticing the subtle intensity behind my calm facade. "I'm just thinking about the bakery," I replied casually, not revealing the storm that churned inside me. After Daniel went to bed, I reviewed the latest batch of evidence Mr. Thomas had sent. There were photographs, receipts, and even a few emails between Julian and Allison discussing their plans to finalize the transfer of my bakery's assets. But in the margins, I noticed subtle mistakes, things they thought were hidden. I realized I could exploit these errors, turning their overconfidence into their downfall. I also considered the timing. If I acted too soon, they would adapt. If I waited too long, they could cause irreparable damage. Everything had to be synchronized, precise to the minute. I even practiced moving through the house silently, imagining the worst-case scenarios, planning for each contingency, and then I devised the next step. I would need Julian and Allison alone, under controlled conditions, where their arrogance would make them predictable. They thought they had free rein when I left for Nashville. Now, I would orchestrate a situation where they would reveal everything in their own words. Every lie, every scheme, every betrayal, I would catch it all, and this time, I wouldn't leave anything to chance. I poured myself a cup of coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of empowerment. The rage that had been a silent fire inside me had transformed into something sharper. Clarity, focus, and determination. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was in control. The stage was set. Julian and Allison would make their next move. But this time, every step they took was being watched, and it would be their undoing. The next morning, I acted as if nothing had changed. I brewed coffee, kneaded dough, and arranged pastries in the bakery display with a practiced smile. Customers came and went, complimenting the new flans and breads, unaware that behind the counter, I was plotting the final moves of my plan. My eyes occasionally flicked to the security monitor, making sure every angle was covered. Julian and Allison had grown careless. They didn't suspect that I had eyes and ears everywhere. That evening, I told Daniel I had an early meeting in Nashville. "I'll be back late," I said casually, hiding the tension in my voice. "Be careful, Mom," he replied, concern lingering in his eyes. I smiled faintly and kissed the top of his head. I needed him to believe. I was leaving, so the bait would be irresistible to Julian and Allison. Once, Daniel was asleep. I carefully prepared the hidden recorder in the bedroom. It was a small device, capable of capturing every sound with crystal clarity. I tucked it behind a photo frame of our family, Julian, Allison, Daniel, and me on happier days. My hands moved smoothly, almost mechanically, setting up the device with precision. Every wire was hidden, every angle accounted for. They wouldn't even know it was there until it was too late. By midnight, I had my confirmation. Julian got out of bed, phone in hand, moving silently through the house. I hid behind the living room curtain, listening as he spoke softly to Allison, arranging another secret meeting at the house while I was supposedly away. Her giggle, the familiar sweet tone that once made me trust her, now felt like ice in my chest. "Finally, we can do this without hiding," she said. Julian's deep voice agreed, and my pulse raced, not with fear, but with anticipation. I returned to bed, feigning sleep, yet my mind was fully awake. Every word, every movement was catalogued. I double-checked the recorder, ensuring it would capture the entire conversation. Then I moved to the kitchen, assembling a simple smoke trap as a diversion. A skillet, a thin string, and a can, an ordinary setup, yet capable of creating enough commotion to force them into revealing themselves as the early hours approached. I felt a strange sense of calm. The house was silent except for my controlled breathing. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a strategist. Every past betrayal, every hidden lie, every stolen glance between Julian and Allison had led me to this point. Soon they would walk right into the consequences of their own arrogance. Rehook, end of part 9. They thought they were untouchable, that their secret world was safe, but one misstep, one moment of overconfidence, and everything would come crashing down, and I was ready to watch it unfold. Dawn had not yet broken when I made my way across the street to Mrs. Peterson's house, careful not to show any hint of urgency. She greeted me with sleepy eyes but didn't question my presence. "I just need a spot to watch the house for a while," I said, forcing a calm tone. She nodded and offered me her window seat, pouring a fresh cup of coffee as I settled in. From here I had the perfect vantage point. The front door, the driveway, and every corner of the living room where Julian and Allison would soon step into their own trap. By mid-morning, the tension in my chest grew with every passing minute. I sipped my coffee, pretending to be casual while my fingers tapped against the cup. Then I saw it, a taxi rolling up the street. Allison stepped out first, sunglasses hiding her eyes, her dress carefully chosen to signal elegance and control. Julian followed behind, glancing around with the familiar sense of entitlement, completely unaware that I was watching every move. I switched on my phone, connecting to the hidden recorder. Allison's laughter, her light, condescending tones, and Julian's deep, conspiratorial voice streamed directly into my ears. "Finally, no more hotels," Julian said. "We can relax. Allison's voice rang with sly amusement, and I clenched my fists. They had planned this for weeks, thinking I would be gone. They didn't realize that while they schemed, I had been preparing the perfect counterstrike. A few minutes later, I remotely activated the smoke trap in the kitchen. Thick black smoke spiraled from the skillet, seeping out of the slightly open window. I could see the neighbors' reactions, their heads turned, mouths agape, curiosity ignited. Mrs. Peterson gasped beside me. "Juliet, your house!" she whispered. I smiled faintly, keeping my calm exterior while inside. A storm of vindication roared. Inside the house, Julian's shouts of panic and Allison's screams reached me, faintly through the recorder. "What's happening?" I imagined them thinking, caught in their own arrogance. The black smoke was thick, and the smell of burnt oil filled the room. The trap worked perfectly. They were immobilized, flustered, and humiliated. I stayed silent, my heart steady, letting the chaos of their own making unfold. Within minutes, the fire truck sirens pierced the quiet street. Daniel arrived, commanding his team, breaking down the front door with authority. Neighbors gathered, murmuring, pointing, their eyes wide with shock. Through the recorder, I heard Daniel's commands, the flustered shouts of firefighters, and finally, Julian's desperate voice, trying to salvage some dignity. But it was too late. The entire neighborhood bore witness to the consequences of their betrayal. In that moment, I realized the full extent of their arrogance. They had no idea that the truth would not just reach me but the entire world. What came next would shatter their lives completely. Through the headset, I could hear the chaos unfolding inside my home. Julian's grunts of frustration, Allison's panicked sobs, and the muffled commands of the firefighters created a symphony of humiliation they fully deserved. I sipped my coffee, calm, but my mind was racing with the satisfaction of justice. Finally, I felt the scales balance. After years of betrayal and manipulation, Mrs. Peterson quietly filmed the scene, her eyes full of pity and admiration for the woman who had endured so much. Minutes later, Daniel emerged from the house, his expression a mixture of shock, disgust, and sadness. His uniform was dusty, his boots scratched from the entry, but his composure remained. I had called him beforehand, ensuring he had the envelope of evidence ready, along with pre-prepared divorce papers. Handing him the folder, I watched as he silently nodded, understanding the magnitude of the betrayal. Julian and Allison, trapped by their own arrogance and cunning, now faced the consequences of their actions. Inside the hospital, I feigned worry as nurses treated them, administering ointments and cleaning their burned skin. Yet my mind was elsewhere, cataloging each piece of evidence, each betrayal, and each lesson learned. The tubes of mustard I had prepared earlier replaced the ointment, a final small act of poetic justice. The screams echoed faintly in the hallway, mingling with the murmurs of astonished visitors. Julian and Allison had lost their dignity, their schemes exposed to the entire community, and worst of all, their trust with the people around them, trust that could never be restored. Weeks passed, and life gradually returned to a new normal. My bakery thrived like never before. The bell on the door rang constantly, welcoming customers who admired not just my pastries, but also my strength. Daniel moved in, quietly helping manage deliveries, orders, and clients. The warmth of our shared mornings, the smell of fresh bread, the soft clatter of trays, and the simple conversations over coffee was healing. Each day we rebuilt not only the bakery, but also the bond that Julian and Allison had tried to destroy. I also found time for myself. Cooking clubs, quiet church visits, walks with Mrs. Peterson. These small joys became the new pillars of my life. Daniel slowly opened up about his work as a firefighter, his stories of courage and teamwork rekindling my pride. We had lost a family, yes, but we had retained the most important things: trust, resilience, and love between mother and son. Every flan I baked, every loaf of bread I prepared, reminded me that I had survived, and I had won. Not through cruelty, but through unwavering resolve. And now, I want to hear from you. Which city are you listening from? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want more tales of resilience, betrayal, and triumph, support me with a super thanks. And don't forget to subscribe. 2 new life stories are waiting for you on the screen. See you next time, with love and respect. Remember, strength is built from the pieces we thought were broken. Comment your thoughts, share your city, and join me in exploring more real-life stories of courage, GE, and survival.